Welcome to the Illuminati broadcast. I'm your king, David Moore. Welcome. All right, so just wanted to talk about some Revelation stuff because they're like, well, you can't have the Messiah without Elijah and Enoch. Okay, so in Kabbalah and any freaking religion that you go to, Elijah would be the daytime, right? And Enoch would be the nighttime. So you have these two pillars, these are the witnesses, and they're always there. So no matter what, the Messiah is going to exist, right? So these are those two palm trees, and they emanate. So this would be the tree of life. At the top right here, you have the Libra scales and then Aries, so it's sprouting up and it's creating this foliage. And you have these fruits, and then they fall down and they replenish the earth and it sprouts back up, and these are the seeds. I guess when they talk, they speak fire, right? So you have the fire elements where they're speaking out from. Because you have Sagittarius here and you have Mars up here. This is the daytime still because the sun's going up here and its highest peak, and then it starts settling down. This is still daytime. This would be kind of that morning time and then nighttime, so night and morning, and then day and evening, right? So Adam and Eve, so Elijah and Enoch. So that's just one thing, just to get out of the way, because I know people are like, what does it mean? All right. What else do we have? I want to talk about my ancestors. So let's see. We have Nile of the nine hostages, which is my great grandfather, which is I'm a descendant from the first Irish king. So there's these things called the Malaysians, the Milesians, and it was like the Greeks. They were Greek, but they lived in Spain, kind of. So they were like big philosophers and astrologers, and they used to use this. So basically, they used to be Jews. So they would have been Hebrews, they would have been Jews, they would have been Egyptians, they would have been Babylonians, they would have been royal hierarchy. And a lot of people don't know this. If you've ever seen the show Black Clover, a lot of the nobles and the royals have really strong magical grimoires, and that's because their families have carried on that information, and it passes on through their DNA, their spiritual DNA, etc., etc., etc. So that means my family's had a long line of spiritual DNA, where they're in positions of power and leadership. I was looking at my ancestors, and then you have the Malaysians, right? So the Malaysians, however you pronounce it, and they were one really cool thing I found out was one of the first ones that were like philosophers. I don't know his name, but he mentioned something about like May 28th, and that there was a solar eclipse or a lunar eclipse, and that it stopped the fighting, etc. And I was born May 27th, so he has May 28th, and I'm May 27th, so that lets you know that I'm like super aligned with my prophecy. Another thing is there's like this Jewish Kabbalist dude that like created golems, and he died on May 27th. So there's a lot of like interesting facts about that date. Like, it's a very powerful day. So that's cool, right? Now we know Elijah, because if you do notice, I don't know about the Enoch part, but the Elijah part, I guess the Enochian tablets, right? But anyways, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12... Wait, 2, 4, 6, 8. Remember, the corners count as 2 spaces or 4 spaces. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, and 18. I think that's Eligos. And Eligos is obviously Elijah. And then the next part would be Enoch, right? So you have the day and you have the night. You also have stories about like Ishtar Nana. She has this tree. She has a lion. And she like takes over these tablets from the other gods, which is cool. We love stories like that. I guess that's kind of just where I wanted to go real quick, was just give you guys a little bit of history tidbit of information so you guys can understand things a little bit better. I think what I want to kind of do is tie in like, okay, so now that we know about the Malaysians conquering Ireland, and it doesn't mean that they're not native there, because they are. So basically, when Noah was on top of the mountain in Germany, he went down to Israel. His people went down to Israel, then they, prospered there. So obviously they started off first in Germany. They went to Israel. They conquered that and everything. And then they went back up to Ireland. So they went to become Greeks, and then they went to become Irish, and then they went to become English, and then they just kept going and conquering the earth. So that's what makes my bloodline so unique and powerful, is that it's the conqueror's blood, and not everybody has that because, you know, it's not something that everybody gets. It's only passed on to the boys. So that means this boy had a boy, and this boy had a boy, and the boy and a boy, and they just kept having boys. But usually in your bloodline would be like, this boy had a girl, and then this girl got married to this boy, and then they had a kid, and then they had another girl and a boy, and then this girl became had a baby with this boy, etc. So you guys are all like dividends, but mine's just like linear, very straightforward. It didn't like break off because it didn't go, oh, boy, 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 and then girl, and then have a boy with another person. No, it was boy, 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 boy. So there was no dissolution in the blood. And then they do mention it like, the Malaysians brought the dark hair and the dark eyes and the dark skin to Ireland because there's some people out there that are like me. And there's like a couple of us that are related, and it's like a couple million, and they're out there in like in New York and other places like that. But mine is still much more stronger than theirs. So if we compared each other, like my bloodline would be stronger than their bloodline. And thanks to my pedigree, it helps. So pedigree is everything. Just like how you would have show dogs, you know, like if you have really good pedigree, you have a really good breed, and you will have more success when it comes to being able to tap into like spiritual energies. That's why people like the Levite priests would only pass it on to their sons. And I am a Levite. So they always say like, the Levites are extinct now. Yes, in a sense they are, because like let's say with the dingoes, right, with the Tasmanian devil dingo thingy, I forgot what they're called, they were like this breed of dog in Australia that was going extinct, and there was only a few left. So it was like that, and once it died out, so I'm like the last one. So once I die out, it's completely extinct, but I'm like the last member of it. Of course I have like cousins and uncles and brothers and my dad, but they can't pass it on the same way that the pedigree that I have. So theirs would be less if they ever try to pass it on in any other way. It would never be the same. Mine is like the complete 100% solution, and it's right there at the bottom, and it's being wasted if I'm gonna be honest. So I have to make the most of it, right? But it's basically like the last pure strain of God, and there's no other mix, no other DNA, nothing that can compare to mine. And I love to challenge other people. So if you ever have anything in your little head that you think that, you know, you're right about something, you might be right about something, but I can always turn it against you and make it right for myself, because obviously I'm the pharaoh, I'm the king, I make the rules. So yeah, I don't know, I just love this template so much. So if we look, you know, like in the morning in Venus era, that's when the sun's rising. It's still nighttime. It's still like early in the morning hours, and then the sun starts rising, and you start seeing it go through the day from the east into the south, and then into the west, and then it goes back around, and then, you know, this is when it's nighttime, and then the morning again, and then here we go, the whole day, right? So that's this little symbol right here. So, you know, the sun rises, it gets hotter in the day, it starts cooling down, it starts settling down, it starts ending. And if you look here on these ones, I think it's this one, right? So let's see, 1, 2, let's count it real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Okay, it's not that one. So this one. All right, so this one, the sun is moving from this direction, right? From the south. So this would be when it's early in the morning and you can't see the sun. This would be like 1 o'clock, right? Or 12 o'clock. So this would be 1 o'clock. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this would be like when the sun starts rising. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. This is the evening time when the sun is right above us on the south. But how does that make sense? This is the direction of north, and this is the direction of south, right? So how would that make sense? So there's this pillar of air in the middle, a column of air where the sun is being supported, and it's rotating around this column. And while it's rotating around the column, it would probably be looking like this around the column. So this little piece would be the pillar, and this is the sun moving around it. So when it's early in the morning, you can't see it, right? Because it's invisible. So that's why Libra is represented by invisibility, air. And the air creates this fire, and that fire creates water. So that's why you have water right here. And and the water creates earth, and then it goes and rotates. But the sun is basically moving from the south, because it's always going to be on the opposite side of the earth, right? So if the sun's rotating around this pillar, it's going to go like from here. So that would be like what, 1 o'clock, and it starts to shine. This is the sun symbol, and it starts to shine, right? And then once it reaches like 6 o'clock, you start noticing the sun. It breaks the dawn, right? And then you have like the morning time right here, and then you have the evening, and that's why the Mars is right here, to show that it's like really hot during the day, and then it starts cooling down, and then this is when it starts going into Neptune. So this is Pluto when the day starts, because Pluto, if we look at the stories of ancient times with Persephone, we see that Hades is a breaking of the dawn, because he emerges and he takes Persephone. And then he takes her to the underworld. So he wakes up, he comes out, he takes her, and then he takes her to the underworld, and she makes her way back out. So that P for Pluto, Persephone, or Hades is that combination. But usually we see Pluto as like the underworld, but it's the exit of the underworld in a sense, because it's like, okay, now you made it through hell, you can make it through the world. So usually hell, my mom always says, like, hell is here on earth. We are in hell. People think that hell is like this place in the afterlife, but it's here. It's in the moment now. That's why we have bad things and we have good things. And back then, the Elysian Fields, which was hell back then, and heaven combined. So you had good parts of heaven and you had good parts of hell. Like, you have good and bad. Like, you have the good parts of the earth and you have the bad parts of the earth. Like, there's good things and bad things and everything. That's why it's called the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And then you have the garden of good and evil, right? So you have this idea, and that's that tree too. So we have the whole Bible here, like Genesis, like this huge, this is how it was all created and how it's all made and how all the stories are told and what it all represents and means. And this has been passed down through generation and generations. And in my family, it's usually presented like orally, and something that you're raised in. So we are raised like this, very strict code of honor and conduct, and it's not something you find anywhere else. Like, I would look at other people and I'm like, why don't you have this? Why don't you know this? Why don't you live it? And it's because their families weren't born with it. They weren't entrusted with that. They weren't leaders. They're not kings. They're just, peasants. They're just commonwealth, and they don't have a leader. And so they never grew up with all those rules and that right way to live. And it's very Christian. Yes, my family's very Christian in that sense, because we follow like very strict rules. And then, but even when I notice other Christians do it, it's not the same, because they're not us. They're not who we are. So like, they do it all wrong. They worship God, but it's kind of like they're just worshiping, but it's falling on false ears almost. Like, it's like, who are you praying to? Like, that's not really God you're praying to. You're just going to church and you're praying. You're wishing that God would hear you, but it's not the same. It's like you're not really praying at all. You're not even trying. Like, you're just trying to live. It's kind of sad. It's really, really sad. So like, Christians are not real Christians, and I can say that I am a real Christian, because obviously I was raised better than most people. I had a better upbringing, and it has nothing to do with money and all that stuff. It has everything to do with value, and like where you put your value. Anyways, yeah, so we can see like this is the sprout. So you have the swords, which is the sprout of like the grass and the trees, like the little plants that grow up before the tree grows. But these are the seeds, these are the stones. This is this creates this, right? But this created a tree. The tree created fruit, and then those fruit created seeds, and it creates the cycle of life. I do notice that they put these signs in a certain way. So this would be, let's see, if this is summer, this is spring, this is fall, and this is winter. Maybe it's more like this is winter, this is spring, this is summer, and this is fall, winter, right? Because winter would be like the coldest hours of the night, right? And spring would be, you know, the day starting to warm up. Summer would be the hottest part of the day, and then winter would be like the cooling. I mean, fall would be the cooling of the day, and plus the fruits are falling. So, but usually they show it to be Aries. So where's Aries? Down here. They would show Aries, Taurus, and Gemini as spring, and so it would be these like that. But I would want to put Gemini here, and then have Taurus there, and then have Aries there, so it makes more sense. But it just doesn't make sense when I try to move the sphere around. So I'm like, okay, well, if this is spring, I guess this is like the first day of, this is the first month of spring, right? April. But I think they also say something about March being like the first time of spring too. Anyways, but this would be winter. So how is this winter? How is March, April, and May winter? That doesn't make sense. And then June, July, August is spring. November, October. August, September, October. That would be summer. And then fall would be January. December, January, February. That's interesting. It doesn't make that much sense. So let's see if this would be spring in the morning. So I guess that springs up the earth, and then this would be summer, the hottest time of the day. Then this would be fall when it's cooling down, and then this would be winter. Okay, so that makes a little bit more sense, right? Because March would be like the last month of winter. So it kind of goes from spring to summer, I guess, here, right? And then fall, and then winter. That makes a little more sense. That gives it that like corner space. That's why those corners are important. That's why they have four spaces. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Yeah, and then these would be all the 72 names of God. There's 72 names here. You would have to count everything, but if you do 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, so we'll start from here obviously, but 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. If you make it all the way through, you'll get to 72. So this would be 36. I think this is 50. So 52, 54, 56, 58, 60, 62, 64, 66, 68, 70, 72, right? That's that 72 names of God. But you also have the time of the day. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Whatever. So that's 24 hours, right? So you not only do you have the 24 hours in a day, you also have the months, and then you have the days as well. So like, let's say Friday, Saturday, Sunday. This is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Thursday. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, right? These 7 planets. And these 2 are going to be like the axis of Saturn. So when you look at Saturn, you have Neptune and Pluto with them, right? So Pluto is obviously the entrance to the exit of the underworld. So this is like the sun's appearing. That's the exit. They're coming out of Pluto. And then they're going into Neptune, because when they go into Neptune, it's breaking from the earth and creating water. So it's cooling down the earth. Yeah. So that's why you have this mythology of Zeus, where he slays Saturn to become the next god. And you get that in this story right here. So this would be Jupiter. And then this is obviously Saturn, but Neptune. So Saturn had eaten Neptune, right? And Jupiter had to conquer him. And you have Capricorn right here. And Capricorn is that beginning of the story where they break the horn of the cornucopia. So the horn of the goat, clack. That's why usually the goats are represented by like Satan and stuff like that. So Saturn. and its ruling planet is Saturn. But it's under Mercury because it's an Earth sign. So, and this is the tabernacle when they open up the gates of the tabernacle, so you can go inside of the holy and holies. And this is why they have the goat as the scapegoat to like they use this energy to give it to the goat, and then they send it out into the wilderness to redeem everybody's sins. That's why ritual sacrifices are important. It makes a huge difference because it needs to be physically and spiritually done to move the world around. That's why I'm like, yeah, Jews, go for it. Sacrifice things, because if you don't, you're not going to get what you want. Like in Ifa, it's a spiritual practice that I've worked with and I really appreciate and I love, like Ogun and Oshun and all the rest of them. The Orishas, I love Ifa. Like it's something I really treasure and practice. And it's the 7 African powers, and that's what these are, the 7 African powers: Ogun, Oshun, Obatala, who is this? I don't know, Yemaya, and Yemaya is over here, and then you have the rest of the gods. There's 7 right here, the 7 African powers right here. But yeah, so you have this tabernacle, and but this is also the Mount Olympus, right? So you have Zeus going through here, and then he conquers over Saturn, and this is the Capricorn part, and this is the Saturn. So that's why you have 2 Jupiters right here, because those 2 Jupiters are Pluto and Neptune. So the Pluto is obviously right here, and the Neptune's right here. But then you have the stories about Zeus having children, like Hermes. So this is Hermes, which is Mercury, right? And he steals the cattle from Apollo. And you have Apollo over here, and you have Artemis, and then you have Ares and Athena, and these are the 2 gods of war, right? The feminine and the masculine, and they rule supreme over all of the land. And then if you go down into the underworld, this is why usually they'll show like Amun-Ra or Aset down here in the underworld. But this would be the hottest time of the day as well. So it's like this combination of ruling above as below is so below, whatever you call it. Yeah, so maybe later today I'll like design the symbols a little bit. I just keep, fixing and adjusting it so it can come out nicer and nicer each time. I use these bold lines, but I think I'm gonna use the thin marker because I feel like I could get cleaner results. And the thick ones are nice and you can see them clear, but yeah. So anyways, you have the trees right here, the leaves, the grass, the sprout. This will be the tree trunk. So it's the combination of the seed and the sprout growing into a tree trunk, and then this is the fruit. So this is the tree branches, and this is the fruit because the fruit has like water in it, right? And it has seeds and it carries things like a woman does. So there's like, we have a lot in common with trees. Like we have the veins and the roots and the tendrils, etc. Like these are our leaves, our hairs are our leaf, our skin, etc. Yeah, so it's just really cool. It's scientific, it's alchemical, it's spiritual. This is the ephod, this is the Elon. I don't know the name of the channel, but this guy, he shows his Elon. It's really great. I'm really impressed by how he did it. It's really well done. It looks great. It looks fantastic, and he knows what he's talking about. And I don't see anything wrong usually with what he says, because usually I'll see something wrong. Like with Asmongold, I'm like, oh my god, this guy says so many wrong things, but at least he says them, and at least he's getting the world moving. But sometimes I'm just like, oh my god, you're what's wrong with the world. But I'm like, you know what? He's very like Mars oriented, so he's just like, I know what I see. But then you have to have that divinity of that female divinity in a way to say like, you know what? I know what I see, but I also feel a certain way. And he feels, but he's more feeling on his impulses than what he can't see, because this is what you can't see. So when they're talking about Charlie Kirk being assassinated, he's like, it don't make no sense. There's no pentagram, but there is. It's a 5-pointed star, right? And there's a 5 little pentagram where he got assassinated. That little home base, that's a pentagram. It has 5 sides to it. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, and he didn't count the 5. He just put 666, like whatever. But this is the 666 right here, because these 3 Saturns, this is a 6, a 6, and a 6, but this is also 7 as well. I usually forget why, but there is a reason why. Let's see what else we can work on. I think these are 9 spaces. Yeah, so 9 times 8 is 72. And you have 9 spaces and 8 spaces. But all together would be 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, whatever. But also this is the 6 and the 4 and the 4. Yeah, so you have these cool Greek mythologies. You have this Jewish mythology tied into here. You could tie in every mythology into this. This is like the template of mythologies. In mythologies, they used to say the Malaysians are a mythical race of beings, but if I'm a grandson of the O'Neill and it's in my ancestry and my DNA and my blood results, like literally when you look at the blood results, it'll show that DNA. So it's not a myth, it's not fake. So we are the children of King Arthur. So if anything, I would be King Arthur. I'd be able to pull the sword out of the stone. So I guess this would be the stone and you're pulling the sword out of it. This is also the Lady of the Lake, right? So this would be an ocean because it's a big form of water. This is a river because it's connected. And then this would be a sea because seas have like fish, right? Because they're still connected to the river, but they're a little bit separate. Sometimes they're even still connected through the whole thing. But and this silver could be seen as water as well. But this is the lake because look how it's just isolated, right? But this is also Cancer. It's that woman aspect, like the womb, right? So you have the Lady of the Lake, and this is represented by swords. This is the sword symbol, the spade. So it's showing like, hey, look, this is the sword. That's why it's called España, like espada, sword. That's why the Malaysians are from Spain and they went to Ireland, but they're not the same. Like, if you put me and a Mexican person next to each other, we're not the same, even though half of my family lived in Mexico doesn't mean that they're the same people as them. Like, they're different people because my bloodline's way higher up there and it didn't muddle down there. So you couldn't compare me to them and them to me. There's like a huge difference. But so the sword, yeah, the sword from the lake. So the Lady of the Lake. So Venus is usually seen as the lady, right? And this is air and the swords. And even in the Dantuan or whatever it's called in the Irish mythologies, there's a lot of stories about these 4 gods, like these twins, 2 girls and 2 boys, and that's the Apollo and Artemis, and that's the story from like Paris and the Trojan horse, etc. Those are all the same myths. So anyways, the Lady of the Lake comes up with her sword, and this is the lake, right? And King Arthur is seen as this lion, and these are the symbols for the lion. So they're coming to get this sword and the rising of the sword in the morning. And that's why people have morning wood. Yeah, you know, physical science as well. And then it rises, it goes through here. But and then he conquers the world, whatever, with that magical Excalibur sword, and then he returns it back to her at the end, right? Because it's like the day comes and the day goes, So even though it's like my ancestors, not only did they spiritually live this story, they physically lived it, and they experience it till this day, right? And as do we all, because we're all children of each other, right? But mine is all the way at the top, so you guys are beneath me. Let's just be real. I can't say that I'm beneath you guys. I have to say I'm above you, because if I say I'm beneath you, then that would be a lie, right? Yeah. Okay, anyways, yeah, so we got these cool symbols. Usually you can see this pyramid symbol right here. So that's why, you know, Egypt has that pyramid, and that's kind of where the beginning everything starts from, right? With Egypt and Israel. And then this is the symbol for the sun, the Star of David right here, but it's also a conqueror's star. That's why Aries is associated with Mars, etc. And even Libra is seen as a judgment, so Athena and Aries. And then we have Apollo, lovely Apollo. And then, you know, we're moving through the different domains over here, which is the evening. So yeah, just a little mythology tied in together so you guys can figure everything out. Because people were like, well, Baal is the devil, this and that. No, it's all the same. God and the devil are the same. There's no separation. Just don't try to separate them. If you separate them, you're just lying to yourself, because you're saying that that the devil is the one that's influencing you, not God. No, God is the devil, so he's influencing you one way or another, and it's always gonna be God. Because people don't want to be judged by God, and they don't want to be like, well, God is gonna punish me. Because if you were out there, like, and you knew that, like, you wouldn't be able to live with your life. You wouldn't be able to be around people, because they'll be like, well, you don't believe in God, so you're not one of us. So people will be like, well, it's the devil makes lies. It's like, no, you're making a lie to try to protect yourself from being judged by me, right? Your God. All right. Yeah, so we have this, like, obviously the scale, the tree, the sunset. This is the earth because the sun rises and it sets. That's what we see. We see the sun rising and setting, right? Yeah, so the Malaysians, they're not mythological, but in a sense, mythological doesn't mean that it's fake. It just means that it's legendary, kind of like a legendary Pokemon, like it's stronger, right? It's like the fundamentals and the basics. So this is just the fundamentals and the basics of alchemy and magic and real world aspects. And this does make a huge difference because the more I educate you on this, the more you're going to notice people are talking about it because this activates. It's like a drum, right? Like it activates, it creates a sound, it creates movement, it creates a ripple. I'm bringing that sword out into the world and it's going to go and move and do what I need it to do. So this is how the world works, the air works. This is why people are like, you're casting a spell, you're speaking words. Like, get over it. Everybody talks. Everybody does those things. It's going to happen one way or another. It's just better to go with the flow than to resist it, right?